Hey, good morning. It's Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. It's round 2 for employees at Amazon's Bessemer, Alabama warehouse voting in a do-over union election that wraps up this week.
At the end of the day, I believe I've done all I can do to make sure that they've gotten educated and everyone is able to make their own decision.
In a minute, we'll hear from workers there and from reporter Katherine Leong about how the election is shaking out. But first, let's get you caught up. Speaking of Amazon, the company will pay up for unsafe working conditions at its warehouse in Kent. The Department of Labor and Industries hit the company with a $60,000 fine yesterday. State regulators found that the rate at which workers must perform repetitive tasks puts them at serious risk for back, shoulder, knee, and wrist injuries. The company has been cited for similar violations at other warehouses. Amazon says it plans to appeal. Meanwhile, a state appeals court has mostly upheld the city's extra protections for renters. The city council passed measures to ban evictions in winter and let people pay off rental debt a little at a time. A rule that bars landlords from evicting anyone for 6 months after the city's COVID emergency ends didn't make it through. The court struck that down yesterday. The state's Rental Housing Association cheered the decision and says it still has issues with the winter evictions ban. And one of the city's all-time basketball greats is calling it a career. Rainier Beach High School alum Jamal Crawford made it official yesterday. After 20 years in the pros, he's on to the next chapter. Crawford won the NBA Sixth Man Award 3 times. His 11,000-plus points makes him the league's second leading scorer off the bench. And while his NBA days are done, Seattle fans can still see him at the Summer Pro-Am League he's been running for years. Amazon workers at the company's warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, are voting this week on if they want to join a union. It's the second time. The warehouse already voted against forming a union a year ago, but the National Labor Relations Board ordered a new election after it found Amazon violated rules in how it influenced its workers. Employee Coco Eatman says she plans to vote no. Her job as a picker at Amazon, she says, is a lot better than her last one.
I worked at Children's Hospital. I think I've been there almost 7 years. They weren't really paying any money. Well, it was okay with that because I'm also a stylist. So I needed the benefits that children had to offer. And my money that I made as a stylist kept my bills flowing. Plus, I got hurt at Children's where I had to, my ankle had to have surgery on and my knee.
Coco's job at Amazon pays her almost $6 an hour more than the job at the hospital. She also gets regular pay raises, and she's paying less for health insurance. All those benefits, she thinks, mean workers at the facility don't really need a union.
I felt that they offered us so much. So my point is, I want to know what they want to negotiate. And the employee said, well, more money. I said, well, they're already paying you so-and-so an hour. You're already guaranteed from Amazon that you're going to get a raise every 6 months. So you want the union to negotiate something that Amazon really don't have to do or can take down at any time because people are not being appreciative of what you have. When does greed not kick in?
Workers who organize the union vote say there's plenty Amazon could and should be doing differently. Organizer Jennifer Bates says there are lots of instances where workers have been treated unfairly.
A young guy I saw get fired, walked up on the conveyor belt to get to the other side to his job. He worked on the other side. There were no signs that say, hey, don't walk up on the conveyor belt. He's a young guy, young kid, you know what I'm saying? Probably first or second job. Instead of the managers giving him a warning or a write-up or something, the next day they fired him. I know about the conveyor belts because I've been working around them for years. But there are some people who need to teach it.
Jennifer says Amazon has a lot of power over its employees, including stopping those pay raises after employees have been there for 3 years. Having a union, she says, would give workers more of a say in how things are run.
I want the union to allow us to have a seat at the table. Right now, we don't. Amazon says they have an open door. You have an open door and we voice our opinions. We voice some of the things that we want changed. But even after me being there 2 years, those changes hadn't happened. But bringing the union in opens the door and give us a leverage to sit down, and we're able to negotiate better breaks. We get 2 breaks in 10-hour shifts. We wake up and our schedule has changed. Some people get to work late because I didn't know you were going to change my schedule. Guess what? They take that hour away. So we want to make Amazon accountable for the things that they're doing. We're bringing 100% to the facility, and we expect the Amazon Fulfillment Center or the owners to give us 100% as well.
Workers have been casting ballots for weeks. Friday is the deadline. Katherine Leong has been covering the vote from here in Seattle, as well as down in Bessemer. She covers Amazon for Business Insider. Hey, Katherine, really good to have you back.
Oh, it's so good to be here.
So, as I mentioned, this is the second time workers at this warehouse are voting to join a union. Remind us what happened with the first election.
The first time around, a federal labor relations panel declared the election null and void. They said Amazon had improperly interfered with workers' votes there when the company placed a mailbox that it said was to collect votes right outside the facility.
Okay, so it was really just a mailbox that was right outside the facility that caused this union vote to be thrown out. So here we are at round 2. You went down to Bessemer and spoke with a lot of workers there. Tell me what your biggest takeaway was from those conversations.
You know, Trish, the thing that surprised me the most when I went down to Bessemer was how much the workers that I spoke to trusted Amazon. You heard Coco Eatman saying how differently she's treated at Amazon than she was in her previous job. And I heard people say that over and over again. Amazon pays them better. The healthcare is good. They see opportunities for advancement. When they compare Amazon to other local employers, they feel that the company will keep them safe.
Right. A fascinating point. And, you know, counter to a lot of what we've read. We've seen a lot of bad press around how Amazon treats its workers, especially warehouse workers. Tell me a little bit about the root of this positive perception of the company in Bessemer.
A lot of it has to do with how Amazon is perceived in contrast to other local employers. We heard Coco Eatman talking about how much more she's paid at Amazon than she was at her previous job, how much better the health coverage is. Workers say that they feel like they can trust Amazon to keep them safe. One worker that I spoke to in Bessemer told me that when her friends go in to work at local poultry processing plants, they come back and they're missing a finger or two. And she said no one is missing a limb at Amazon. They also have had negative experiences with unions in the past. I think some of the media coverage from the first election in Alabama seemed to indicate that workers in the region are anti-union. And that's really not the case for most of the workers that I spoke to. They said they're not anti-union. They think that unions are necessary for work like mining and auto work and in these dangerous poultry processing facilities. But they also have been scalded by some of their experiences with unions. There's a mine worker strike happening just down the highway from Amazon's Bessemer facility that's been going on for 11 months. And workers say they don't think that they would want to do that. They've also seen some violence on that picket line, and that has made them skeptical about what could happen if they join a union.
I want to talk about the perception of worker safety because that's a pretty dramatic example where nobody is losing a finger. But in fact, Amazon is the subject of a few investigations right now by Labor and Industries.
That's right. Washington State in particular has taken an especially sharp look at Amazon's injury crisis. The state has opened 4 investigations into workplace safety at Amazon facilities here in Washington. The most recent is the most severe. The state issued a willful violation against Amazon, saying that it intentionally disregards federal law and workplace safety. Workers at Amazon are 4 times more likely to suffer a strain or sprain, the kind of thing that's caused by repetitive motion, than workers at a non-Amazon warehouse.
Okay. But the first election result, Amazon won. It was overturned because the company unduly influenced its workers. They've been accused of union busting frequently. Is the company approaching this election any differently? Probably not putting that mailbox on the property this time around.
You know, it's funny. They do still have the mailbox, but it's way farther away. It's out in the corner of the parking lot this time. From what I could tell, you know, Amazon is not doing much differently than it was the last time around. One thing that a lot of workers mentioned to me is Amazon's captive audience meetings. These are mandatory trainings that workers have to attend during the workday, where Amazon tells them why they should not join a union. These are highly effective. They are legal. They've been legal since the late 1960s. Employers use them often when they're trying to combat union campaigns. And in my conversations with workers, I heard workers repeat some of the lines from those captive audience meetings, basically verbatim to me, when they were justifying why they didn't want to join a union.
So these are meetings that take place on company time where workers have to show up and listen to company employees tell them about why they should not unionize, just to be clear.
That's right. That's exactly what happens. And unions have for a long time said that's not fair. They don't have a similar forum to voice their opposing viewpoints. The retail, wholesale, and department store union, the folks who are trying to organize the Amazon workers in Bessemer, they've actually filed an unfair labor practices charge over Amazon's practice of using these meetings in Bessemer.
And, just thinking back to all the interviewing you were done, I wonder how comfortable employees were talking with you about this situation.
I was surprised to find that employees were very comfortable to speak about their preferences with regards to the union. I will say that employees have every right to speak to reporters about working conditions in their workplace. The people that I spoke to in Bessemer, Alabama, were interested in taking advantage of that right.
I'm curious, do you have any interesting stories from your time there that really kind of shed light on the vibe going on in Bessemer right now?
This is a standoff that has visibly consumed the town. There is a giant Amazon billboard as you go down the highway telling you to vote now. There is a similarly sized painting off the side of the highway telling workers to unionize. There are yard signs all over the place of people expressing their support for the union. A group of anti-union employees has started picketing the warehouse, in contrast to the group of pro-union employees who are picketing the warehouse. This is a large fight for folks in Bessemer. This is something that is talked about in restaurants at the local Waffle House. It's in the air, certainly.
Katherine, a lot of what we've been talking about is pretty specific to Alabama. But there are rumblings at other facilities as well about unionizing. 2 warehouses on Staten Island are holding union elections next month. I'm curious what you think about the dynamic and whether or not it might be different in other places around the country.
I think it could be. I'm actually headed to New York on Thursday, and I'm excited to see for myself how it could be different in New York versus what I saw in Alabama. But I will say that, New York is a much more heavily unionized part of the country than Alabama is. Workers tend to have a lot more avenues for employment in a place like New York than they might in somewhere like Bessemer.
Sounds like everyone is invested one way or the other in this outcome, Katherine. Workers in Bessemer have until this Friday to cast their ballots. Katherine Leong covers Amazon for Business Insider. Thanks, Katherine.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Clare McGrane produced today's show with help from Jason Pagano. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.